a topic that I think has really been on my mind as I've been on this journey, which is what is the future of television and how do we actually think about television today and in the next 10 years when we're actually trying to understand the viewpoint of how this works in a very complex multi-channel media landscape, right? So of course we're all aware of, we all use multiple devices, we have multiple touch points, multiple channels. Even within the digital ecosystem now, it is so much more sophisticated than it's ever been in the past. And really the question is now, how does TV fit into this new world, right? Like when digital started, it was a lot about how does digital fit into the world, which was TV first. But now the question is, how does TV fit into a world that is digital first? Um, so to give you a bit of an introduction about myself, my name is Astha Kalbag. You can find me on LinkedIn with that name as well if anyone wants to take screenshots. That is also my email ID in case you want to reach out and have a chat about different channels, when it comes to effectiveness of different channels, recommendations about, how to grow businesses. That's something that I'm very, very passionate about. And before I go into my presentation about, television and digital, I just wanted to share a bit about my journey to give you a context about the lens with which I view the world today and how I see the world evolve tomorrow and in the next few years. So this is a bit of a snapshot of my journey. And the one line of my journey is that I would say that I'm a digital native baby, which means that I have grown up in the world of digital. I love digital advertising. And I think I've always seen the future of marketing, of businesses that has been fundamentally digital first, right? And this is why I think I've been even more curious to understand, hey, what does that mean for the more traditional media, such as television, radio, out of home? Does that still have a relevance in today's world? Will it still have a relevance in tomorrow's world? And how do we all kind of work together as different channels so that we can help understand our customers' needs first and serve them in terms of marketing messages where they are, right? So marketing has always been about meeting your customers where they are. And I think that no matter how many channels change or evolve, that is always going to be how marketing will fundamentally evolve, right? Which is, let's meet our customers where they are. So just a little bit about my journey so far. I have been in Singapore for quite a few years now. I studied university here at Singapore Management University. I'm originally from India. I've moved here to Singapore a few years ago. And I think my entire career has been within the Asia Pacific region, headquartered out of Singapore. So I started with a growth marketing role at Skyscanner, which is a popular travel company that I think a lot of you would have heard about when it comes to booking flights. That was a really key part of my journey because I tried to understand what a marketplace looks like. How do you actually grow a business in a more sustainable way? And how do you actually grow different markets when, a brand that is a bit new at the time, how do we actually take that from ground zero to where it is today? And how do I be a part of that journey? So growth at Skyscanner was a big part of my story. After that, I moved to Uber, which was, extremely fast paced. I was in the performance marketing team where I worked with different channels, again, all within the digital media landscape, as I would say, primarily focused on social media channels. So Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, all of those under my belt. And of course, that led me to my next big move, which is actually in a marketing science role at Facebook, where I currently sit full time, which basically means, as I was sharing earlier, right, within the marketing science team, we are doing exactly what my title and role says, which is matching marketing and science together and seeing the magic and the beauty that comes out of that, right? So really being able to exercise the left side of your brain and the right side of your brain together to actually help our advertisers make business decisions, make marketing investment decisions, and helping understand from a very unbiased point of view how is it that we are going to play a role in helping them grow their businesses. And I think helping businesses grow, seeing businesses grow, has been something that I have always been very passionate about. I've been someone who really believes that we need to have a DNA in which we are always thinking about growth as a business. And of course, what is it that's going to fuel that growth, right? So what are the channels? What are, the growth hacking techniques to get us there? And also today, what I'm going to talk about is an even broader lens, which is, when we talk about different channels and the right mix, where does digital play a role? Where does TV play a role? Where does TV tomorrow play a role? And that's what I'm going to talk about today. As a side note, I also actually have been very passionate about sharing my knowledge about the industry with the world outside and being able to collaborate with people who are very passionate about marketing in general. And I've written a blog since I was, since a few years now, which I try to keep updated, where I share my opinions and my thought leadership about marketing and best practices in marketing. The blog is called mooketing.com. Please do check it out. And I think it's a great way for us to actually stay connected about what is happening in the outside world and kind of have a viewpoint about where the world of marketing is taking us tomorrow. And of course, I think marketing itself is such a dynamic environment. There's so much happening within the industry. And what was true yesterday is clearly not true today. And what is true today is, of course, not going to be true tomorrow. And what I'm trying to have a chat about today is really having a bit of that vision into the future about what the future of TV is going to look like and how, as marketers, we can all play a role in helping shape that, understand it, and being a step ahead of it so that we can actually find our customers where they are. So, with that, I'm going to actually dive deep into my presentation, and I would love to have a discussion and go through questions at the end if we have time. So the one liner of my presentation, and which is, I think, what's most exciting, right? I'm not going to just put a blanket and say, hey, all channels are relevant. The one liner of what I'm going to talk about today is the opposite of what's happened in the past few years, which is TV is becoming digital, right? When the digital marketing industry started, digital was always trying to keep up with television, which was the dominant channel. But now, as the tables are turning, and I would say that it's not completely turned in all markets and all regions, but I do feel like that evolution is ongoing where digital is now taking a bigger and bigger share of the advertising dollar pie. And now we are in a situation where in some markets, digital spends are actually much higher than traditional television spends. And I think what's really exciting about the next big thing in advertising tech, in in where advertising is going tomorrow, is the fact that, can you imagine that television is now actually becoming digital? So as these tables turn, let's try to understand what that means for the future of television and where we can go with this on this journey with TV. So I guess quite a few of us on the presentation today remember this, right? Like, what is really, our idea of TV when we think about, when we have an idea of television, right? We think about it as, this box that we look at with these antennas, and then we would wait for some show to come at a specific time. And then you would have like these bursts of advertisements. Over time we could flip those channels, there was more variety. And then of course there was like satellite television where we could record television. So TV has in its way gone through its own transition and evolution in the way that it has become more relevant to the people who are watching it, right? But TV today is actually very different from this, right? TV today, I mean, if you look at any ad on, a big shopping website, and you hear all these terms about, hey, this is a smart TV, it's got, HDMI ports, and you can access YouTube on a television now. And, if you just take a step back, I know things have changed so fast in our world when it comes to tech that I don't think we've completely absorbed that just within our lifespan. We've seen so much evolution of tech from when we started watching TV to how we view television today, right? And I want us to stretch our imagination a little bit more to think about, hey, if all of this happened within a few years' time, within the next few years, where is television going? What is connected TV, which is what I'm going to talk about? What does that look like? And what does that mean for marketers? What does that mean for cross-channel advertising spend? And what does that mean in terms of where we want to take our advertising strategy, our marketing strategy, in terms of understanding the overall marketing media mix, right? So to dive into this a little bit further, right? I guess the big $1 million question, and I wish someone pays me $1 million for answering this if I made tonight, is in the world of digital, will television still be alive? Right? I know that Kenneth and I were talking before, and he comes from the world where TV was something that he was pretty leaned in on, and I think this is a constant debate or discussion in the industry, which is, hey, will television still be alive today? Will it still be alive tomorrow? And as we get more glued onto our smartphones, do we really even need a TV, right? Now we're starting to have conversations about, hey, is this something we even need in the first place, right? And I think that's when we want to start thinking a little bit further about, will this still be alive? And if so, in what shape and form? And if we know what shape and form that is there something that we can start planning and working towards to actually build for a future where television is perhaps yes and perhaps not a part of the marketing world? And of course, right, coming from a marketing science lens and looking at data to make decisions, that's what I do. That's my day job. That's something that I always look at. I think the question is, again, let's say TV is still alive tomorrow. The question is, how are we actually going to measure the effectiveness of television in a digital world, right? How do we actually know if TV is going to be something that is going to drive return on investment when it comes to advertising dollars, right? What is it that we need to be prepared for in the future so that we can actually understand the effectiveness of television in that multi-channel environment when it comes to, hey, maybe I'm spending 60% of my budget on digital. How do I know that maybe spending 20%, 30% of my budget on TV is actually bringing me any value, if at all, right? I think definitely gone are those days when in a marketing team you could get away with saying, oh, I don't know where half of my money has gone, right? That era of Mad Men is over, right? Like today we're accountable for every dollar that's invested, and we're accountable for the return that it's driving for a business with every single dollar that we're investing. And I think as marketers, it is even more important for us to actually hold ourselves to an even higher standard moving forward, right? For every dollar that we invest, we need to be able to understand what is the return that we're getting, and we need to optimize that return and calibrate that moving forward so we are actually maximizing the value that you can extract from every advertising dollar that you're investing for the business, right? And I think that's where we really need to have that effectiveness first mindset, and not just a channel first mindset, right? So we really need to think about this much more holistically with a broader vision into the future, with the different channels and understanding how potentially we can measure the effectiveness of this going forward. So yeah, ta-da! TV 2.0 is here, and I would love to welcome you all to the world of connected television, right? This is something that, I think a lot of us are probably already quote unquote onboarded on, which is, you just think about, let's say your, latest Samsung smart TV, and you don't really realize it, but you're part of the connected television ecosystem, right? And when we think about what this means really from an advertising perspective, that's when we start to see more question marks, right? So it's always been the case that, there is a technology shift, which benefits users, which is why users move to that platform. And then because users are on a specific platform, advertising dollars kind of chase that, right? So marketers then start to understand, hey, you know what? Let me draw out a consumer journey. Let me think about all of the touch points that my potential consumer has. And then let me take that a notch further to actually understand, hey, they're actually watching, maybe now that we're all spending a bit more time at home, we're actually maybe watching 2 hours, 3 hours, maybe sometimes 4 hours on a weekend of television. And then I start to wonder, hey, can I actually have my brand there? Right. And that's the question, because we don't know yet how advertising is going to change in this connected television landscape. Right. And that's something, I'm going to talk about and address quite deeply into how advertising, and specifically advertising tech, ad tech, is evolving very rapidly to actually cater to this new shift of the connected television. So before I dive into, this presentation, a little bit on, the jargon, right? Like, what is connected TV, right? That's the question. Hey, Astha, that's great, but what is connected TV? Connected TV basically means that we're talking about any device that is connected to the internet, where you can access video streaming content beyond what is available on, normal cable TV. Like an example of that would be, like, let's say watching Netflix, right? I'm watching Netflix on my Samsung TV. This means that I'm part of the connected TV ecosystem, right? I've gone beyond the traditional cable cord television. And, if you are one of those people, some marketers and people in the industry would refer to you as a cord cutter, which I think is quite brutal as a name. But basically, it just means that you no longer have a cord that's connecting to the TV. You're connected to Wi Fi and you're connected to the internet. And that is TV today, which is very different from TV a few years ago. And we're trying to understand what is the role and the game that marketing is going to play within this overall landscape, right? So I think just a few key points to kind of think about, right? When we think about really the size of the opportunity here, I want everyone to just take a breath and think about, one of the more mature markets. We always talk about, the United States when it comes to the size and the maturity as a leading indicator of perhaps where some of the trend lines are moving towards, right? And today we see more than 50% of US households that have TV connected devices in their homes, right? So this audience, this population, this user growth has already moved and will continue to move, as the rest of the world will also evolve in that direction, right? So we are talking already about a billion of these smart TVs, that are already connected in households as of today, right? And that is a huge opportunity. We're talking about at least a billion consumers, but I would say maybe one household has two or three people living. So we want to just multiply that at least by two people to know that, this is a huge market. And you just take a breath about the numbers and you think, hey, what is the role that marketing is going to play within this mix, right? Like, how are we thinking about buying on television differently than what we did in the past? And how is the world changing with digital, being something that I think everyone is talking about, everyone is focused on. We all talk in terms of digital metrics, in terms of digital effectiveness, and what is the role that television is now going to play in this digital, dominant world, if I may say, if not digital first, right? Um, and I think the main thing that we want to really be sure about, that we've got a pulse on, is that connected TV is actually going to be the default way that most people watch long forms, full screen video in the future, right? So, of course, like we all love talking about video, and video is genuinely the way that we are going to continue to consume content in the future, right? So, of course, when we use, let's say, Facebook or YouTube, that is when we start to watch slightly more short form content. But once we start thinking about content that's, the length of a movie, that's when we start to think about, hey, what is the use case of connected television? Because you've got someone's attention for 2 hours continuously. Are we as marketers going to play a role in that? And how is some of, I guess, the advertising technology already evolving for us to actually play a bigger part in this entire evolution? And as I say, uh, marketing 101, I think since the era of 4Ps, I think where there's an audience, there's an opportunity, right? And we want to actually be sure that we understand the size of this opportunity, and we perhaps start thinking a bit more forward in terms of, hey, what are the things that are evolving? What are the things that need to be evolved? And what are the things we need to be on top of to be mindful about this entire evolution, right? And I think that's really what makes marketing exciting. What was true yesterday is definitely not true tomorrow. And it's that dynamic, I think, that keeps me up at night and keeps me very excited about, where this industry is really going and how fast it is evolving. And of course, as I say, right, where there is an audience, there is an opportunity, and advertising spend is already catching up, right? So, technology, users, advertising, right? That's the three-step transition, as I would call it. And we're talking already about $40 billion of projected ad spend by 2021, right? Which is, by the way, half of the projected spend of traditional television advertising revenue. So television advertising in general has been huge. And now we're talking about almost half of that moving to connected television advertising, right? So I'm not talking about a share shift yet about, hey, is money going to move out of digital or not? That's not even the question. The question is the money that's moving out of TV going to move to connected TV, or is it going to move to other channels such as digital, right? And that is something that I think is really, I mean, I would say it's $1 million question, but honestly, it's a $40 billion question in terms of where this is going and how we're going to play a role in it. And of course, I love talking about uh, the future together, right? I don't want to be someone who, only sees the world with a digital first lens. I want to see the world in a very holistic way when it comes to marketing channels and really trying to understand, hey, with the onset of digital, with all of the evolution that's happening in that landscape, what is the future that connected television is going to have alongside digital, so we can work together as channels to actually serve our audience in the best way possible, right? I think that many times there seems to be a fight between, hey, is TV better, is digital better, or no, this is better, that is better. But I think, if you look at it from a more holistic perspective, it's about where is your consumer, how are we going to serve them, how are we going to serve them in an efficient way from a spend point of view, and second, how are we going to serve them in an effective way from a reach point of view, right? How are we going to reach people in an effective way where they are today, right? And let's start to envision that future together. And I just want to talk about a few key differences between TV and digital, and then kind of try and envision this future together alongside all of you. So, what is, I think, at the moment, the difference between traditional TV and digital, right? So, I'm not talking about connected TV yet. I'm just talking about TV as it, is in a lot of parts of the world today, and digital, right? And there are a few things that we want to see the differences and how this potentially can come together, right? So, for those of you who've probably been in the television advertising industry, you would have probably heard about this term called GRPs, which is gross rating points, right? If you watch a show and you kind of often hear this term thrown around, which is, hey, I need more points, I need more gross rating points, and that is a terminology that's come from the television era, where it's kind of like an estimate to see, hey, out of the total potential audience who you actually want to reach, how many people have you reached? And that was, at the time, the best way for us to actually measure the effectiveness of television. And let's talk about what digital looks at, right? And we just speak different languages as of today. Digital, when it comes to a video, looks at something that we call a cost per view, which is how much does a view cost. Of course, there are a lot of other metrics when we look at, and without boring you with the jargon, but theoretically, what we're looking at, what is the click through rate? What is the cost per conversion? These are some of the metrics that we look at in a digital era. The point here being that the metrics of success that we look at as of now are just very different. Like, we just don't even talk the same language with TV. So there's just no way for us in the state of affairs today with traditional television that we would actually all be on the same page, right? And I think the question here is there a future together for all of us, right? And we know that people still watch television, and we also know that people spend a lot of time on social media, on Facebook, on their phone. And of course, now we also know that there's a lot of cross device simultaneous behavior, which means that you're probably watching a show and scrolling through your phone at the same time. So the user behavior is there. The question is, from a marketing point of view, can we actually talk the same language? Can we use the same metrics? Can we buy media in the same way? And this is really, really critical, because if we can't measure A versus B on a same metric, we will never be able to understand where I should probably spend more money and where I should spend less money, right? So this is a very critical piece of the puzzle as of today, for us to actually see the evolution of TV 2.0 working together with digital marketing as of today, right? And that is the future of television. I'm going to talk about one of my favorite words now. It's called programmatic. And when I say programmatic, what does that really mean, right? And of course, this can go pretty technical, and I've purposely tried to make sure that I try to simplify it as much as possible. But programmatic media buying is a bit like, buying ads on an auction, right? So right now, as of today, if any of you have bought, let's say, Facebook ads or Google ads, there is an auction system that has been created. You bid for a specific ad. You say, hey, for this ad, for this conversion, for this click, I'm willing to pay 50 cents, $1, $2, for this person, for this action, right? And that is programmatic media buying. So there's a buyer, there's a seller, there's an auction system that works. And that's how we trade and transact in digital advertising as of today, right? And to give you a bit more of a sense before I go into this any deeper, there is technically an advertiser, right, which is in this case us, and there's an audience, and there are a few things that happen in the middle when it comes to programmatic media buying, right? So there is very clearly, because there's a demand and there's a supply, there's a platform which is called a demand side platform, and there's a supply side platform, right? And what these platforms try to do is they try to talk to each other through a common, in this case, it would be an ad exchange network, where you are trying to basically help an advertiser reach an audience through a bidding process, right? And how is that different from how things were done in the past? A lot of times in the past, things worked on, let's say, long contracts, or which could primarily be relationship based or contractual based. which means that, hey, I'll tell you that, you know what, I'm going to spend X amount of money on your channel for the next 3 months because I have a big product launch, right? And programmatic, and that's why digital marketing changed the game, because I had the ability right now in real time to switch off a campaign that wasn't working. I have the ability right now in real time to see metrics in terms of how my campaigns are performing at this moment. And I have the ability to change the amount I'm willing to spend depending on how my campaigns are performing, right? So programmatic media buying made everything more dynamic. It made everything more transparent. It brought a lot of data into the ecosystem, and it helped marketers make decisions on the fly, right? And the case for connected television and the future of connected television is that programmatic is actually coming to TV, right? So a traditional channel that talked gross rating points and, hey, this could be a potential reach, now is evolving into a platform where, as an advertiser, I can buy on specific, um, I guess I'll talk about that, but on specific publishers, to be able to say that, hey, I'm willing to pay X amount of money in an auction. So a lot of the goodness, if I could say, of the technology between digital marketing is now coming to television. And that is the future of marketing in television. So, what is a programmatic marketplace, right? And to give you a bit of sense about this as well, right? And this is where things get really, really exciting, because this is basically very similar to, how digital advertising is done. There is now an opportunity for private marketplaces to be created where I can advertise on high quality publishers, right? So I can be very specific about, hey, these are publishers who are creating great content. The audiences that I want is watching this content, and I want them to be able to see my brand, to remember my brand. I want that TV mindset to translate to the way that people are consuming content as of today. And where things are very quickly evolving, if I may say, is when now targeting starts to get more enhanced, right? I can have more targeting options available where within a programmatic landscape, I can say, hey, this is specific inventory that I want to select. These are specific content sites that I am okay to be a part of. And these are very, very specific, let's say, geo-targeting options available where I want to actually reach to a certain demographic within a certain region or with certain interests, right? And I'll talk about that a bit more into what that landscape looks like for the future of television, right? And just to be super clear, right, what are we measuring? And to give you a really clear picture, the measurement aspect of television advertising, of connected television advertising, is really at a very, very nascent stage, right? Right now, we're still just trying to catch up in terms of technology to actually reach our audiences in this new world, in this new environment, right? And for anyone who comes from a lens of, hey, what is your cost per click? What is your cost per conversion? People who come from more traditional performance marketing backgrounds, let me tell you, that is something that we can't measure because there is no click, right? But where things really get exciting is the opportunity to build brand, right? We actually can start to see things like view through metrics, right? How many people have actually completed your video? What is your cost per completed view, right? And if you compare this to traditional television, this was something that maybe we didn't have a very good pulse of, right? I didn't know if you changed the channel or not. I just knew that I was spending money to advertise at a specific time slot to a specific audience, right? So things are actually getting much more dynamic and exciting in, a traditional industry of television that we thought was perhaps, quote unquote dying. But I think television is also evolving, and a lot of the goodness of the measurement and the data that sits within digital marketing is now coming to television. And that's when all of the magic starts to happen, when television and digital now start to talk to each other, and we start talking the same language, we start optimizing for the same outcomes, and we meet our consumers where they are at different points in the day, and at different levels of attention as well. Taking this a step further to give you a bit of a view on what these metrics really mean, right? And so that everyone is on the same page. A cost per completed view, just two metrics I'm going to talk about, but these are the most critical metrics. A cost per completed view basically looks at what is the total number of spend divided by number of views, right? And I've written out some estimates, but I think that the estimate is not what's important. The importance is the fact that now we can actually start to measure what a cost per completed view is on television, something that we couldn't do in the past. Similarly, right, what is the completion rate? Of course, right, like the number of ads reached by the number of impressions, right? So that is also a simple sounding metric, but to actually see these numbers within television is a giant leap forward when it comes to actually understanding the effectiveness of our ads on a connected television ecosystem. And of course, I think coming from the lens that where I believe that having data within marketing is really going to be the bread and butter and future of marketing tomorrow as it is today. Measuring the impact of connected television advertising is going to be extremely critical, right? And of course, how are we going to do that, right? It's going to be through attribution, right? What is the true value that we're getting from a specific channel? And this is going to be the direction that the industry is going to be in, right? And we want to make sure that we are on top of it, that we understand it, and that we are evolving our plans in the future to be aligned with this. So I've talked about a few metrics. I've talked about measurement, and I'm also going to talk a bit more about, I think, programmatic television, connected television, about opportunities that it opens up for audience targeting, right? In the past, I would say we were pretty limited on the options that we could have, right? Like it was perhaps a specific demographic, a specific user base. It was a bit more around predictions that a lot of market research firms in the business had based on panels that they set up. But now things are getting a lot more transparent when it comes to advertising in the connected television world, right? And to give you a few examples of what that looks like, there are different kinds of targeting options that are available, right? So I guess to give you a few options and just to give you a flavor of it without going very deep into it, is now we're starting to see some evolution in terms of targeting options for geo-behavioral audience, right? So finding people with a specific behavior pattern in specific geography. There are also, opportunities where we're starting to see, hey, how do I target specific seasonal audiences, right? People who are I guess interested in like a particular shopping season or like let's say Christmas, all of that, right? How do we actually even think about loyal audiences, right? So people who've come to our store, purchased, is there something we can do to reach out to them again and target them? And of course branded audiences as well, right? So are there opportunities for us to build audiences based on some of the brand goals that we have, right? So overall I think the lens and the evolution is that, like never before, now on television, there is a lot more transparency, there's a lot more data flowing into the system, and there's a lot more opportunity to actually target certain audience demographics and segments. And I think on the topic of, with any good kind of targeting a new strategy, there's always a question about how are we going to truly measure success, right? And how are we going to truly understand the importance and the value that being plugged into this ecosystem as an advertiser is actually going to bring us, right? So this is where I'm going to talk about one of my, I think, most loved topics in measurement, which is incrementality, right? And how are we actually taking that a step further when it comes to connected television? And what do we actually do when we're trying to play a role in this future? So, what is incrementality, right? Incrementality actually gives you the opportunity to understand the difference in behavior when people are exposed versus not exposed to advertising. And incrementality is a topic in measurement, I would say, not specifically to a channel. If you think about any of the clinical trials that happen in drug testing, that's where the idea of scientific testing actually came about, right? It actually started even further when it came to agricultural testing to understand, hey, if fertilizers are helping me or not. But we took that a step further when it came to clinical trials and drug testing. There was a placebo and there's a specific drug that you're testing. And that same scientific methodology of a control group and exposed group was further kind of, I guess, adapted to a marketing world, right? Which is exactly similar in concept when it comes to having that scientific testing mindset, which is what is the difference in behavior when people are exposed versus not exposed to advertising, right? Um, and to give you a bit of a flavor of what this looks like, I think this is the most important graph when it comes to incrementality testing, right? What is the incremental lift, right? So this word, incremental lift, is what we are chasing as a North Star metric, right? Within this industry, this is exactly what we're gunning for. If I have an audience that doesn't see my ads, and I compare that to an audience that does see my ads, is there an incremental lift in business outcomes? For example, is there an incremental lift in sales outcomes? Is there an incremental lift in brand outcomes? And I just wanted to take a moment for all of us to actually absorb this slide, because this is going to be the foundation of all measurement within the advertising industry, right? When it comes to digital advertising, traditional advertising, connected TV advertising, any form of measurement, the only real way for us to see true causation, which is what I talk about a lot as well, right? What is the causal impact? If I do X, does it truly lead to Y? And the only way for me to actually see that when it comes to testing scientifically is to have a control group, which is like a placebo group, and an exposed group.
Asta,
Yes.
real quick note, we have just a few minutes. We're running just over time.
Yes. Cool. I just have a few. Yeah, I will be good on that. Thanks, Kenneth. Yep. So just super quickly, I think taking it a step further, right? So where is it that we want to actually focus some of, I guess, the measurement frameworks, and where does this go, right? So just super quickly, we start with reach and frequency measurement, and we are taking this a step further to actually understand how do different channels interact with each other, right? And that is the journey that I think connected TV is going to be on as well, right? So let's be on this journey together. And super quickly, I would say, what are just the few things, the top lines that I think we all want to be focused on, right? And I just have a quick 5-pointer for everyone to note down, right? So the first one is connected TV advertising is outpacing traditional advertising, right? So this is a huge opportunity for us to actually be a part of and be a part of that story. The second thing is that TV and digital can talk the same language, right? And we want to make sure that we are part of that story. And the third thing is programmatic advertising has come to television, right? The goodness of digital has come to TV, and we can play a big role in that. The fourth takeaway is that audience targeting from the digital world has also come to TV, right? So it's not just buying, but it's not just media buying, but it's also audience targeting capabilities that has come to television. So television is now evolving very, very, very fast, and we want to be part of that, I guess, transition and evolution. And last but not the least, incrementality and cross-channel measurement is going to be a critical part of the success of TV 2.0, right? And we want to make sure that we understand that as this evolves and we stay on top of this, just so that we understand tomorrow when I want to make media budget investment decisions, I know the true value that different channels are bringing for me to be able to understand, hey, where do I invest my next marketing dollar? And with that, I will close my presentation. Thank you so much. My name again is Astha Kalbag. Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn or drop me an email at astha@mookiting.com. With that, Kenneth, I'll pass it over to you.
Okay, I got a question for you though, before you get out of here,
Yes.
that I think we all have to think about as marketers. And you know this is not necessarily a Facebook perspective at all, but when you think about all the walled gardens for building your audiences, how do you go about looking at that? Because your customer is going to be on multiple channels, and building your audience across those, trying to target people, whether they're on Facebook or uh, Netflix or whatever the actual service you may be targeting actual ads on, a Hulu, for example, or one of those. How do you look at that?
Yeah, so I would say I think things are evolving pretty quickly, right? In both directions. One is that obviously I think user data will continue to be more and more protected. And the second thing is, how do we actually build custom audiences for marketers to target specific audiences, right? And I think the top line answer for connected TV in particular is there are quite a few vendors on the markets, traditional and evolved market research firms that kind of give you a sense of layering of what this looks like. So I would love to discuss this with different people. It's a broader conversation, but definitely I think it's a great question and something that I think we're all curious about to see how this evolves as we move into the future.
Yeah, I would agree. So great job.
Thank you for that,
Uh,
Kenneth.
appreciate it very much, and have a great day.
Thank you.